Hello, I'm David Fairfield, music composer and sound designer. I've worked on projects for video games, for linear media, for the internet, and today we're going to talk about a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. We are going to talk about writer's block, but maybe not in the way that you think, well, unless you've read the title, the myth of writer's block. The myth of writer's block. Now, I wrote over 300 minutes of music for Disney, and I'm not saying that because I'm trying to brag, although I would love to earn some of your trust for the next 30 minutes. I'm saying that because I don't think I would have written 300 minutes of music for Disney if it weren't for the fact that I learned that writer's block is a myth. So let me go back a little bit and tell you a story. So, I was 26 years old and I was finally given my dream job. I mean, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. I was going to write music and do sound for Disney. I was working for a studio that was doing video games, and this was really, really exciting. I was introduced to a space not unlike the one that you see here, a little project studio that was at the studio, and it was my big moment. So the thing is, I'm sitting there in this space, realizing this is like, this is it. This is my opportunity. But my excitement gave way pretty quickly to something else. And that was a bit of fear, a bit of insecurity. But the task has to be done. I have to create something. So I sit down and I start plunking away. But there's a bit of a problem. See, previously I'd written music. It's the only way I would have gotten the job to begin with. But it was usually a labor of a day or two, or weeks even, if I finished at all. And to be honest, a lot of the time I didn't finish. I got stuck. But here's my big break. Okay, David, time to be brave. Time to write something like exceptional. I was starting to get paralyzed. Paralyzed by a fear and an insecurity. Not only just like, is the music good enough? But a question started to come up in my mind. The whispers started to come, the doubts and the fatigue. I was like, am I good enough to do this? And I don't know about you, but maybe you can relate to that. Maybe that's part of the reason why you're here listening to this talk. And honestly, fear is crippling. What we call writer's block is crippling. But what I'm going to argue today, what I'm going to propose today, is that writer's block is in fact a myth. I think that it's important for us to realize this because writer's block kind of affects us like this. We think of it as this barrier in the road, something that prevents us from going forward, and it's something that's bigger than us and immovable, and you can't get past it. Now, the problem with that is that we're waiting. We're waiting on something to happen. We're waiting for inspiration. We're waiting for a spark of something. And I think that cripples us and it stops us from realizing what the real problem is. So my hope is that in the time that we have here today, that you're going to go from it feeling like it's this immovable barrier, this huge brick wall preventing you from creating stuff. Instead, you'll think of it like this, like speed bumps, little tiny speed bumps, well, sometimes big speed bumps, on the way to creativity, on the way to finishing your project, on the way to making that screenplay, on the way to directing that movie, whatever it is that you're trying to create. I'm hoping that you'll be able to take away something incredibly practical. But I think to get there, we need to figure something out. We need to figure out if writer's block is a myth, then what's going on? I mean, I just told you I experienced a very genuine paralysis. I didn't know how I was going to solve the problem. And honestly, that's where we have to start. solving the problem. What is the real problem? For this, I think let's take a little turn here in the talk. We're going to go into the world of construction. I'm sure you didn't expect this to happen at all, but hey, we're keeping it fresh for you here at Campus Party. So, what's the real problem? If you go into the construction world, I don't think you're ever going to hear someone say, I think I have construction block. I mean, first, nobody talks like that. Second, I think that the reason why people don't complain of writer's block in certain industries is because they have these three things. They have a plan, they have materials, and they have the skills required to do that task. Plan, materials, skill. So unlike thinking about this as this nebulous thing called writer's block and maybe inspiration will strike me, maybe I'll be one of those lucky musicians that in 30 minutes writes an amazing top 100 hit. Instead of that, we have to think through what is actually happening. What is the real problem? The problem has to do with the plan, the materials, and the skills. So what exactly does this look like? When you hit that barrier, when you think to yourself that you've hit writer's block, you have to assess these areas and identify where you have a deficiency. Let me put it like this. Skills, materials, plan. Plan, materials, skill. If there is a deficiency in one of these areas, that is going to cause friction. That is going to cause barriers. That is going to prevent you from creating. So as an example of this, I was working on a project recently that called for a music track. It called for a Western sort of cowboy style, enjoyable, fun, quirky Western track. And it was a good plan. The genre I was trying to write for was really clear. My goals were really clear. The client knew what they were looking for. And in a way, so did I. So what I did is I wrote out a shot list, you could call it, or a list of tasks for myself. That's kind of what the plan is. It's a list of things that you need to accomplish. And one of the materials that I felt like I needed was a harmonica. It's so like quintessential to that experience of like Western style cowboy music. But I didn't have one. I mean, this is a simple example, but really at that point, rather than fear and insecurity and roadblocks and everything like that, it's as simple as getting a harmonica. Now, admittedly, I don't have the skill to play a harmonica very well. So, like, what am I going to do if I'm missing out on the skill here? Well, I compose digitally. The technology you can see behind me is wonderful, and so I was able to use, using the keyboard, the piano, I was able to record and produce this track and include harmonica in it, amongst other instruments. When we're thinking about what is the real problem, and we've thought about these key areas, the plan, the materials, and the skill, and where do we have a deficiency in them, there's something that I haven't yet talked about, which is a trump card to all of them, and that is fear. Fear. And the reason why it's a trump card is that fear can take you from your full capacity. Say that this is you. This is like 100% of what you can accomplish creatively as a human being. And then you introduce fear to the equation. You introduce insecurity to the equation. You introduce uncertainty to the equation. It doesn't even matter if you had a great plan, if you had the right materials, if you've even got the right skills. You're going to get destroyed by that fear. So that was my experience when I was at Disney. I'm there, I'm supposed to be writing, and it's not working. Something that I learned there, something that I think will be really helpful for you in the subject of fear, is that I discovered as time went on, and honestly, it was a slog. I was breaking off old habits. I was breaking off this belief in the writer's block. But I discovered that there was a pattern, a really predictable pattern to the creative process. And admittedly, this may not be your pattern, but I think it might help serve as a sort of template. The pattern is this. There's 4 parts to it. Part 1 is excitement. I feel like I legitimize myself by having these really earth-shattering graphics. Phase 2 is fear. It was that insecurity. And honestly, it was so predictable that that would come in the project. Phase 3 is solve the problem. Obviously, you need to identify the problem. Where are the deficits? Where are we hitting friction points in the plan, materials, and the skill? But now you can actually get to work solving the problem, like a checklist, like a hit list. You can go and do it. Then, phase 4 is excitement. I think, I'm only going to pause here for a moment, but I think it is important to engage in projects that get you excited. And I think maybe I said phase 4 was excitement. I meant phase 4 is gratitude. Phase 4 is gratitude, which is you finish the project and you can say to yourself, I'm so glad I got to be a part of this. I'm so glad I get to create. I'm so glad I get to write the script and have the freedoms that we have to do these creative acts. It's a really wonderful and a beautiful thing. So, we've talked a little bit about the problem, the real problem, not the myth, but the real problem. We've talked about how you can categorize the things that you're working on and where you're getting stuck. And by doing so, you can actually solve the problem. And we've talked about how there's a predictable pattern to each project. Now, it may not be your pattern, what I just described there, of excitement, fear, solve the problem, gratitude, but there is a pattern to the creative process, and the more you engage in learning that part of the process, the better you're going to be. The more able you are going to be to move away from this idea of a roadblock to this idea of a speed bump. And honestly, driving on the open road is so much more fun than being in a parking lot. So the next thing that I'm going to share is something that I've been learning more recently on the subject of fear. I've been experimenting a little bit on social media. I don't really do a lot on social media, but I've been doing some stuff on LinkedIn, posting little thoughts, ideas, career advice, suggestions, things like that. And recently I did a post. I spent a fair amount of time thinking about it and putting something into it to make it high value. And then I posted it live. Now, I went into the kitchen to see my wife, and I wanted to show her. I'm so proud, like, look at what I've done. I was going to her expecting her to say to me, oh, David, you are so smart. You are so capable. You are so able. Instead, what I got, and she's an English lit major, so it comes with some weight. She said, it wasn't your best, and it didn't flow very well, and really it was a little hard to follow. Oh, that hurt. I mean, that was painful, and I'm an adult, I can handle it, but honestly, that hurt. And what I realized from that experience was something that is really important with the issue of fear as it pertains to what we call writer's block. And that is, we can create for ourselves a sort of system, a cycle of fear which prevents us from creating things. In some ways, you could just call it perfectionism, but I think that honestly, it's rooted in fear. So here's another sophisticated graph. Of course, along the bottom, you have time. And then here you have the intensity being high and low. And we have two values going on. We have agility up here, starts at the top, goes on down. And we have pain down here, starts here, goes up to the top. So at the beginning of a project, your agility, your ability to move swiftly, to move around and make decisions and change direction, it's really quite high. And the reason for that is because you're in what you could call the ideation phase, the thinking phase, the brainstorming phase, the blue sky phase, whatever you want to call it. You are in a place where ideas are liquid. But as time goes on, they become increasingly solid because you're committing to a direction, as you should. If you don't, the project's just going to fizzle. But the problem is the amount of pain that we experience with changes that happen late in the process is really high. Like that example of me and my wife, if I had gone to her early in the process and I said, here is a high level sketch of a post that I'm planning on doing, what do you think of it? She could have said the exact same things to me. She could have said, it's not your best. The flow didn't really work. It was a little hard to follow. But because I'm not up here feeling all that pain and having like no ability to change it, instead I'm over here having lots of agility and really a small amount of pain, suddenly my appetite for being creative, for making changes and tweaks and making it better, which is ultimately what I want to do, my appetite for doing that goes way up. So as we conclude here, our time is coming to an end, but we're going to have a really nice amount of space here for questions and answers. I saw that some questions came up there, and I'm gonna address that in a second here. But as I kind of wrap up here, I just want to say thank you so much to Campus Party for inviting me here. Thank you for Alize and everybody on the team that's been making this happen. It is not easy to take a physical event and turn it into a digital one, but they've been doing amazingly. And well, I mean, interestingly enough, tying into the 4 phases, gratitude. I think that it's worth saying that my experience preparing this talk, I went through each of these 4 phases. Excitement, awesome, I get to do this is great. Fear, like they're gonna find out I'm a phony, what do I have to contribute, all of those things. Solve the problem, okay? Do your diligence, start creating a talk, start building the content, and gratitude where we end here. I'm so glad to be able to be with you today. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm happy to talk about these things. I feel like if you win, if we all win, if we work together, we can create amazing things. So feel free to reach out. You can go to my website, davidfairfield.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. And yeah. So we're going to go into sort of question and answer time. You should see, I believe, if you're on the Campus Party website, you'll see a white area here where you can add questions. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can also add comments there. So I'm seeing here a question. The question is, what inspires you when creating? How does your work environment impact your creativity? So it's interesting because in this talk, I've maybe in some ways hit hard against inspiration. This picture of the artist and musician that they're inspired in a moment and then produce something brilliant. Now that doesn't happen often. Some people I know would argue it's a once in a lifetime kind of a thing. So what inspires me when I'm working on a project, and this applies to music, but admittedly, I think it applies to the creative act as a whole. I think of it as being a sort of a hopper. I think that's what it's called in paintball. It's this reservoir that kind of funnels down and then allows you to play paintball with your friends, The hopper, that moment, is early in the project. That's what I would describe as the plan. I will take time, say that I've been given a brief on a piece of music that a client needs. I will take the time to understand exactly what they're looking for. Maybe they have some temp music that they want to listen to or give as an example. I will do research on the certain genre that I'm writing in, because I do a lot of stuff with video games. On one week, I might be writing for some electronic dance game, or the next week I might be doing something that's cinematic, or, the Western example, or, something else. So what inspires me is the creativity that I see around other people, the things that other people are making. And the goal is by no means to steal from them. But why would I go and create something without the being informed by the amazing acts of creativity that other people have done? So that's what I find really inspiring. Let's see, we have here, what are your tips to get back on track when you lose focus and motivation? That is huge. There's two parts, I think, to that. One is that you need to develop a recognition of what's going on. And I'm hoping that this talk will help give you a little bit of a construct, a little bit of a framework for how you can do that. Um, yeah, once you recognize, oh, something is kind of off, maybe I am experiencing a deficiency in one of these areas, you really got to put your finger on where is that area. So yeah, I mean it's hard, but once you've figured out like, oh, okay, I'm experiencing a bit of a slowdown. I don't have the same motivation I do. I think that some things that are helpful in general is like going for a walk, getting re-inspired by, in my case, listening to lots of music. If you're a graphic designer, it'd be looking at lots of different artwork and stuff. What are the things that kind of fill your tank creatively, get you excited and motivated to keep going? I would say pursue those things. And then honestly, sometimes you just need a break. As much as my time at Disney and at other places, I have to create on command. There is something to be said for I'm a human, not a factory, not a robot. So you might need to take a break, go for a walk, spend time with your family, play video games, whatever it is. Any music projects coming up, we want to follow your creations. Oh, that's very kind. Thank you so much. Music projects coming up. I'm afraid because I, work with companies from like AAA games to little mobile games. They have NDA, the three-letter curse word, non-disclosure agreement. I can't actually share the projects that I'm working on at the moment. But if you're wanting to see more of the, what am I up to and that kind of thing, LinkedIn for the moment is the best place to find me. Eventually, I might get brave enough to go on Instagram, but LinkedIn is the place to find me. Okay. Do we have any other questions here? Now's your moment. Now's your time. The thing is, I don't want you to be shy to address this topic in your life because I think that writer's block, if you want to call it that, fear, insecurity, these things that hit us and prevent us from creating, they're significant. They are the career altering. Something that I'll share here is a story that I heard from a guy named Seth Godin. Seth Godin is a an author, a prolific blogger and writer. He's written over 7,000 blog posts and articles. Um, and so somebody asked him once, how do you write so many good ideas? And Seth asked the person, how many bad ideas do you write? And the person was like, well, I have one idea, I polish it up, I work on it, and then maybe I'll release it, one a month. Um, and from there, Seth's reply was basically, you're not making enough bad ideas. Sometimes in the creative act, in the creative process, we actually have to take the time to create and recognize that we are creating bad ideas, but that's a good thing. That's actually a part of the process, and getting those out of your system is good. It takes some humility to say that, but basically it's realizing that you aren't perfect, so why do you think you can create something that's perfect? And if you let yourself, you let that sink in, then maybe you actually have a chance of making something that is magical. Maybe not perfect, I don't know, but something that's really quite special. So, I mean, that's it at this point. Unless you have any other questions, we're kind of wrapping up the talk here. Again, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find me at my website, davidfairfield.com. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I hope that you got something out of this. And thank you again to Campus Party for inviting me to be a part of this. I don't know where we go from here exactly. We have 6 minutes left. I kind of breezed through that. But that's it. I don't know. Do I play us out? Is that what it looks like? No, I'm not going to do that. Not going to do that to you. All right, everybody. Hope you have a fantastic day. Go out there, create, fight fear, make more amazing projects. Bye-bye.